Good day, my name is Ebuka Obiochandu. Very happy to be here today to celebrate the life of a legend.
If I write rubbish, my mother would say it's wonderful. If I write something great, my mother would say it's wonderful. And I joked about that, but I think about it now, and I needed that. I needed that kind of complete unconditional support. My mother was there for me 200%. My mother was my biggest advocate. You know, I like to joke that even if I wrote rubbish, my mother would say it was wonderful. And I needed both. You know, my father was sort of, if it was rubbish, he would tell you it was rubbish. If it was rubbish, my mother would say, no, it's still very good.
So there was this balance.
Yes, and I needed both. And I gloried in having them. And the reason that I am what I am today is because I was raised by these two magnificent people.
All right, now let's talk about something that everyone would like to hear right now. Because during your mom's funeral, your video of talking about a priest went viral. It resonated with a lot of people. Talk to us basically what happened between you and the priest that is going on. You know, a lot of people. Let people understand this.
Yeah. So my mother was buried on May 1st. And the next day we had a funeral Thanksgiving Mass for my mother. And my siblings and I were all seated in the front pew. We were all wearing purple, which is my mother's favorite color. And, it was a very difficult day. And so at some point during Mass, the parish priest of my hometown, whose name is Christopher Eze, and my parish, the parish is St. Paul's in Aba, and Aba is in Njikoka in Anambra State. So he takes the microphone and he starts talking about me. And you're sitting there kind of trying not to cry because you're thinking about your mother. Yeah. And so I was really taken aback to hear my name. And I'm going to paraphrase him, of course, because I cannot quote him, but, Chimamanda said the church collects money too much. Chimamanda insults the church. Chimamanda doesn't want us to feed the widows. Chimamanda, it was just really shocking. And his tone was very hostile.
At your mom's funeral?
Yes. We were there, our guests were there who had come to honor my mother. I had actually been holding my brother's hand because we were both trying very hard not to cry in the church. And this man just goes off and just... So I was so shocked and so taken aback. And I should say, to give context, is that he was referring to an interview that you talk about, which I had done months before. Mm-hmm. And, I think for me, I've never been afraid of criticism. Nobody enjoys criticism, of course. But it's never been something that has made me decide not to speak my mind. If I believe in something, I will say it. And so the fear of criticism is not something I have. So if this priest had written something to criticize me, even shouted at me at any other venue but the Holy Mass at my mother's funeral, it would have been okay. I really would not have minded. But to do this at my mother's funeral, my mother died on a Monday. The Sunday before, the day before, my mother was in that church, seated in front, and this man said Mass. My mother went to offertory, my mother went to communion. The next day, she died. And this man did not think my mother deserved the respect, the basic courtesy of having a funeral that would not turn into a raucous market. Because that's what happened. People got upset. So anyway, after he started talking about me, I then thought that I needed to address what he had said. So I asked for the microphone. It took a long time before he allowed them to give me the microphone. And so I went up to the altar and, I tried very hard to be very calm and very respectful. His tone had been ugly and I didn't want to descend to his level. So very calmly, I told the congregation, I think that this man has misrepresented me. I said to them, I give money to this church and he knows that. So my point is not about not wanting to support the church. My point is about ambushing people, forcing them. I mean, this man has collections in which he says, if you have 10 naira, come up. Villagers who cannot eat. And so you make them feel that somehow if they do not bring the money, they do not get the special blessing that you get when you come and kneel in front of the altar. So I said to them, you know, you people in this church know that there have been times when the door has been locked because there's a special collection going on. You lock the doors to force people to bring money. And particularly in a church where there are people who can afford it and who are very happy and willing to give. Why do you need to ambush poor villagers who can hardly feed themselves?
So sorry, what's the idea of locking the doors?
Locking the door so you cannot leave until the fundraising is over.
Wow.
Yes. But to be fair, it happened with the previous priest, but it happened in that church. And that's actually one of the reasons I decided I'm done going to church, you know, because there was just not, you know, what's the point of church? We should go to get hope, comfort,
inspiration, and
peace.
Like that. Yeah.
But you go there and there's so much talk about money, right? And again, it's really important for me to say and no, I didn't want to, because I actually had wanted to say a lot more about the priest that day, but I decided that no, I shouldn't, right? Because I thought there is no point. I did make the point that I had given money to the church. I did not tell them other things, such as how this man had bullied my family when my father was buried about money. How when we presented a cow to the church, he was upset. And why was he upset? We should have monetized it. He wanted the money. How when I gave money to the church for the bazaar, because I knew that this man always wants cash, I made sure to go and get cash. Because if you write a check or want to do a bank transfer, he doesn't want that. He wants the cash. And so after I spoke and I sat down, there are two men who were there, prominent men, one prominent man from my hometown, another man who was the chairman of the local government. They both stood up and said they wanted to speak as well. And they said to the priest, you know, this is wrong. We're here to mourn her mother. You shouldn't say this. You know, this is wrong. After they sat down, the priest took the microphone and continued talking about me. Chimamanda should not be saying anything. Chimamanda, Chimamanda. It was unbelievable. And at this point, the ordinary people in the church just got upset. You know, they started shouting. They said, Father, uzugozie, Father, that's enough. This man just would not stop. You know, my husband is usually a very calm person. My husband is known to be really even-toned. But that day in church, he was incensed. He got up. My husband was banging on the pew, shouting at the priest, telling him, stop it, this is wrong. My brother wanted to fight the priest. So we got up, my whole family, our friends who had come to honor my mother, and we walked out of the church. So that's how my mother's funeral Thanksgiving Mass ended, like that.
Wow. One can only imagine that kind of experience. But how has this impacted the grieving process for you?
It's very difficult. I mean, it's very, very difficult. You know, and like I said, it's not even about me. I think that my mother deserved so much better. My mother deserved respect. My mother deserved courtesy. My mother never did anything to that man. My mother gave to the church. My mother gave to him. I can tell you stories of my mother. Father, we should take drinks. You know, my mother, she deserved better. And so it's been very, very painful. Very, very painful. And I think also the way that my mother died, you know, like I said, on the Sunday she was in church. The Friday before she was at Stations of the Cross. On the Sunday she was fine, you know, and then Monday she's dead. And I just think my mother deserved better. You know, I cannot help but think of, you know, one of the Beatitudes. It's the second Beatitude. Yeah. Blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted. We were not comforted. And that priest failed. He failed terribly at his duty. Instead of comforting us, he increased our pain. My siblings and I were so bitter. And I cannot tell you how, I should be allowed to mourn my mother in peace. But I haven't been able to. I haven't been able to because of what this man did. And I haven't been able to because this man has not faced any consequences for his action.
What steps have you taken after that time? Because I can imagine that experience at the funeral and then walking out. Did he try to reach you, to try to explain to you why he said whatever he said and all of that? What happened after that time?
No, he did not try to reach us. And I don't think there's any explanation. But even if there were, he did not offer one. And I forgot to add that when he kept talking, Chimamanda this, Chimamanda that, apparently he said, because we had left, that Chimamanda is not the only one that has written a book. I too have written a book. She's not the only one that has gone to America. I have also gone to America. No, he did not reach out to us, did not offer any explanations. He was supposed to come and bless my mother's grave, but all of us agreed that we did not want him, so we went looking for another priest. And a very good family friend of ours then told us, I'm sure the bishop will do something about this, this is so wrong. So this family friend of ours then makes a complaint to the bishop on our behalf. And I think we had just assumed that, the bishop would reach out to us, and even if the priest hadn't done anything to make amends, that the bishop would kind of make sure that things were done properly. We never heard from him. And so that too was very hurtful. I was then asked to write a piece for the Vatican newspaper. I had been asked before and I had said no because I just thought, the church and I are not really good friends. But after my father died, I started going back more frequently to church because it gave me comfort. And also because my father was such a keen Catholic that just sitting in a church made him feel closer to me, So I wrote about what had happened at my mother's funeral for the Vatican newspaper. And I think I also wrote about, just in a larger sense, that there is a problem if you have people whose duties are to serve, who then turn around and become tyrants. Something is wrong with that. It is not right. My people say, "Ife na adiroma, adiroma." What is not good is not good. And we should be able to say very plainly and forcefully that something that is not good is not good. So after I had made complaints, I was told, oh, you should write to the bishop formally. I wrote a formal complaint. The bishop responded to tell me that he would not be able to do anything. And the reason, he says, was because I had talked about the incident at the bishop's conference where I had been invited to speak. Therefore, he was now unable to act. The Catholic Church is very hierarchical.
Yeah.
So really, the person who is in a position to discipline this priest is his bishop. So I don't know what else to do. And while all of this is going on, we cannot forget the emotional toll it's taken on me and my siblings. We talk about how mommy would feel about this. My mother was a very straightforward person. My mother would tell you what she thought about things. And it just kills my spirit that this happened at her funeral.
Now, the video of your reply to the priest went viral, and a lot of people reacted. And like I said, it resonated with a lot of people when it comes to their perception or their opinion about the way churches are run. Of course, when you talk about churches, everybody feels, okay, leave it to God. They're called by God and all of that. But let's talk about the issue of, does it make you feel that if you have a voice, you have you have a platform, you are a role model to a lot of people, and if this is happening to you, then it's possible that so many others who may not have the kind of voice you have, who may not have the platform you have, who may not have the clout and all of that you have, would have gone through even much more. Does it make you feel like that?
It is absolutely heartbreaking. And you know what? I have to be honest and say that one of the reasons that I want to talk about this publicly, I don't want what happened to us to happen to any other person. I don't want that for anybody. And, you know, when I started talking about this, just hearing back from people, there's just so much that happens, especially during burials and funerals. And particularly, it seems to me, to happen more in Igbo land, the Catholic Church in the Southeast, where priests are so lacking in compassion. They can refuse to bury a person because that person owes some small amount. They make all kinds of demands on the family, and nobody shows compassion. Compassion is lacking. And the whole root of Christianity is compassion. And I think about it, and I think I have the good fortune of being well known and all of those things, and this happened to me, and nobody has faced any consequence. We have not received any apology. The wrong that we suffered has not been righted. So how much worse will it be for people who do not have the platform that I have? Much, much worse. There are people who've had to endure all kinds of humiliations just because they want to give their parents or their loved ones a Catholic funeral. I think it's terrible. It's really terrible. And most of all, it has to change. It has to change because we need to ask also the question, what's the point of Christianity? You know, what's the point? What would Jesus have done? And you think about how Jesus, I mean, when you really focus, and a friend of mine once said, just focus on that man, Jesus. You think about the compassion he showed and how he broke all of these sort of conventions of his time. You're not supposed to dine with tax collectors. He did. You're not supposed to touch a leper. He touched the leper, you know? And then he gives his Sermon on the Mount, and he's talking about how the people who mourn should be comforted. I should say, though, that, you know, because it's very easy to make things very blanket, there are people in the hierarchy of the church, in the Nigerian church, that I have a lot of respect for. And there are people who, you know, there are people like Cardinal Onayekon, who is a great Christian and a great thinker. People like Archbishop Obinna, people like Bishop Akubeze, you know, men who you know are doing their best. But again, the hierarchical nature of the church makes it difficult.
We're rounding off somehow, but the Easter days, the grief still goes on. And you can't just, it's not like a chip where you remove it and you keep it somewhere and then it's not there again. It's there and it's there for life. Like you said, things will never remain the same again the way they used to be. But you in the midst of this, you did a book reading event, which a lot of people have reviewed and has helped a lot of people. How does that make you heal? How does that make you feel comforted?
It does. You know, I felt very, very, I felt so grateful to the people who came. I felt grateful to them for telling their stories. And I think there's something wonderful for us human beings in knowing that you're not alone. You know, I think it's one of the most beautiful things about being human, that my humanity is nurtured by your humanity. And so if you read these things and you think, oh, somebody else feels what I'm feeling, there's a comfort there. So that gathering, that wonderful gathering at the book reading here in Lagos was a gathering of people feeling we're not alone.
Amazing. Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie, thank you so much for talking to TVC News.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.